the big news tonight, as you just touched on off the top, it is that Mark Korda has become the new president of the Collingwood Football Club, and the statement has just been released. Collingwood has long held a place in my life, and I take this role with a strong belief we have in our possession a wonderful legacy of strength and spirit, which we must seek to and do better. We have challenges, but great people and passion to meet them. There's a collaborative commitment from the board to serve our club and create a real progress that we will live on through who will follow. And then this part about you, Eddie. I also thank and pay tribute to Eddie for his contribution that may be the equal of any in the club's 129-year history. His time was a transformational one that we must honour by creating a new age of prosperity and growth for Collingwood. So I just want to ask you, I don't know much about Mark Korda at all. What style of president do you believe Mark Korda will be?
Well, Mark runs Korda Mentha with Mark Mentha, who I think is still on the board at the St Kilda Football Club. He's been on the board. I appointed Mark 14 years ago. He's been vice president for a fair period of that time and in charge of finance and operations. So it's a steady as you go transition into Mark Korda, who has, as I said, been there for 14 years. He knows the finances upside down of the club, and he moves into the other appointment there is Neil Wilson. Takes my casual vacancy there on the board of Collingwood. And Neil is a sensational appointment. He is the former Chief Executive Officer of the VRC, the Victorian Racing Club, and is currently the Chairman of the VRC. He's just taken over from Amanda Elliott. So he's a long-time Collingwood man, has got great knowledge on business, but also in the computers area and digital media and things like that. So it's good that this has now all been done and the club can now focus.
Well, just on that, Eddie, is it unanimous board decision? Do you think it was a split vote? Are you in a position to understand?
I'm not in a position, and I've said the last thing I want to be is being a commentator on the transition to fill my position.
Well, you're no longer the president.
No, I'm not the president, but what would happen is at Collingwood, the members vote in the board then decide who the position holders are.
Well, from the outside, it seemed like Murphy and Korda wanted the presidency. So do you think one's gone quietly? Or
I've led to believe tonight that there was something like 90 applications for my position on the board. So there was a fairly big run up there.
It's taken a lot of people by surprise because Mark has been there for 13 or 14 years, and he was there through the systemic racism, Andrew. So I think that's something that surprised people, that maybe they thought a fresh start would be needed through this period of time. And it's interesting, over the last 24 hours, I just wonder about the timing of tonight. Peter Moore has really endorsed Jeff Brown in the papers today. Let's take a listen to Peter Moore also on the radio over the weekend, the last couple of days.
If they can't agree who should succeed Eddie as chairman, then an obvious solution is invite Jeff onto the board, make him the president, and that's all that needs to happen. He's a great person to lead the club. He's a leader, and the club will be lucky to get him. So the only reason I've spoken up at this point is that they're in danger of not even talking to him. And I just think they'd be negligent and derelict in their duties as board members if they don't.
I heard, Andrew, urgency in Peter's voice there, like he wanted them to make sure Jeff Brown is part of this because he wanted a fresh start and he rates Jeff Brown really highly. You know Jeff pretty well. How did you think he would have fit as a president of Collingwood?
Oh, look, whatever position Jeff would like to take up in AFL football, whether it's president of a club, whether it's Collingwood or on the AFL Commission, he'd be a great contributor. I mean, he's the AFL legal advisor for 30 plus years. I worked closely with him for a number of those years. His knowledge of the game, he wrote the rules, he's been involved in half a dozen broadcast rights negotiations, he loved football. He'd be a great contributor at any level of football.
So great capabilities. You were the former CEO of the AFL. Clubs and the AFL can be at loggerheads, or there's a lot of strategic decisions to make. So do Collingwood need a strong voice at the table of the AFL, and can Korda provide that, or is it a Jeff Brown? He basically wrote the rules, involved in broadcasts. Does that help?
Look, I'm sure Mark will be a great contributor. He's a very fine businessman in his own right, Mark Korda. But as I said, it's important for any club to have a voice at the table. And Eddie was a strong voice at the table and fought for the issues of Collingwood, but also fought for what was in the best interest of the game. And for any club, and I think Jeff Kennett does the same, and there are others in that same boat, it's very important that the AFL gets challenged by the clubs and by presidents who are prepared to use their voice.
Did he make his run too late, Jeff Brown, or is there still an opportunity for him to get on the board?
Well, look, I mean, you can have an EGM, and it only takes 100 signatures. You know, on EGMs. I mean, if there's a legacy that I'd like to leave behind at Collingwood is we don't have elections unless you need to. We didn't have one in 23 years, so we don't want that. People might say, did Collingwood rush with this appointment? It's been 2 months, and I believe this was a scheduled meeting tonight. So they were ready to go. Probably the move to, and Jeff coming to the position that he could add something to Collingwood was probably a bit late.
Is that capacity there for him to get on the board now and bring that capability?
Like everybody, you can stand for election at the end of the year. You could have an EGM.
So in 12 months?
Yeah, well, yes, it would be. The annual general meeting is usually held these days in early February. So now that that's done, I want Collingwood to do what it's always done in the time that I've been there, and that is to be one of the strongest, stablest boards and football clubs. Start winning some games.
So you wouldn't support an EGM? You only need 100 signatures.
Yeah, I don't want EGMs.
Is it possible to happen?
Well, it's possible if you get 100 people, but I would be very, very firm in saying we don't need this unless there was a big reason.
I am curious. Like, the Horizon View was brought forward, but was there a succession plan? Was there anyone on the board you were grooming?
As I said, I was going to use this year to do so. That was there. There were people that I had lined up that I would like to have brought onto the board at various stages, and some of them aren't available at the moment because they had work commitments, etc. So that's there. Look, the board is, other than Neil Wilson, who's on there, were all appointed by me. And Neil Wilson is a bloke that I'd have happily put on a board. So I'm pretty happy tonight that Collingwood is ready to go.
Hold you accountable.
What's that?
Ultimately, you'll still be accountable if that's the case.
Well, not now. That's, I'm out. Mark's been there for 14 years, so he can take it.
I would agree with Eddie Ross. I mean, you don't want an EGM. They're too emotionally charged. They're expensive. They create a lot of angst.
It splits
what was the last EGM?
It was probably when I took over, and that was an orchestrated one. That was by popular demand, if you like, in the end, because we'd already done the deals behind the scenes. You don't want to be doing these things, and what we want to make sure is it's one of the things that I've really been concerned about in the last couple of months is that some ghosts at Collingwood have reappeared who have been long-term people who have split the club. And I was really, really worried. That's why I've been very quiet. I don't want to be running a campaign for anybody. I was absolutely worried that we were going to go back to the bad old days. Tonight, Mark Korda's the president. Rally behind him, get the board right and go forward. And that's what we want. The Pies winning some games, starting by fixing your mum up on Sunday.
I think that's right, your attitude there. But I think there will be some fallout from this because he has been there on the board when the salary cap has blown up, in a sense, where players have had to be let go, and also...
Well, that's more operational level, to be fair. That's football operations manager and list manager, just to be fair.
Again, the report that was commissioned by the Collingwood Football Club to look into racism was tabled. All of those recommendations have been put in place now, and there's, I just encourage everybody to read the report. There's been a lot of big headlines. There was a big scalp, okay? And I, like Andrew, for the good of the club, stepped aside. I might not have necessarily thought I wanted to, but for the good of the club, I stepped aside. And now the club can have a free run at doing things, implement that report, take the next step, and be the Collingwood Football Club that we need for the AFL and the one that I love and would do anything for. So I want these guys to be successful. I don't want any schadenfreude. I want to be there on Sunday, barracking for the Pies. I want everyone to get behind our club and make sure that it continues to be the powerhouse in Australian sport.